Hi, my name is Dan and I'm one of the DT evangelists here at Digital Tutors. In this video, we're going to look at a question from one of our users, LIC, on what features we can utilize to get separate layers in our renders. Okay, so to illustrate this, I have the pod racer scene from the Introduction to Maya 2011 course. Now there are two major features in Maya that we can take advantage of to really help break apart our images for compositing and post-production. One of those is render layers, and the other is render passes. Okay, so let's take a look at render layers first. Over here in our channel box or layer editor, we have our display layers, but we also have a tab for render. So anything here is going to be for our render layers. So the render layers work very much like the layers in a program like Photoshop would work, where you can apply different objects to different layers. Okay, so if I wanted to say select my entire pod racer here, we can click on this button here to create a new layer, as well as assign anything that I have selected to that layer. So we can see it's gone ahead and created a new layer, and we only have the pod racer on this layer. So this could be our pod racer layer. So when we render this out, it'll only have the pod racer. So you'll want to keep in mind that, especially if you have things like HDR lighting or any sort of lights in your scene, you may need to add those to the layer so that they'll actually affect the geometry that's on this separate render layer. Now, the other technique that we can use to help us break apart our images for compositing later on is render passes. Now, render passes are applied to render layers, and they work slightly different than the layers in that render passes, Maya will render the entire image and then break apart the passes that we specify. Okay, so as an example here, what we want to do is have the render layer selected that you want to apply a pass to, and we can open up our render settings, and there'll be a passes tab here if you're using MentalRay as your renderer. So right now it's completely blank because we don't have any passes, so let's go ahead and set up a couple sample passes. Just click the new render passes button, and we have a list of passes that we can add in. So let's say something like beauty. We can scroll down. I can hold down Control to select multiple passes. So I can hold down Control, maybe do a specular, a shadow pass, something like that. Go ahead and hit Create and Close, and Maya will put those in the scene. Now, they're not actually associated with this render layer yet. So what we'll want to do is to actually associate those passes with this render layer. So as we can see, if I say have my master layer here, we want to apply a pass to that as well. We can come in here and do that very, very quickly without having to go in and recreate multiple passes that we may have. Now, we can take this level of control one step further, actually, by using contribution maps. Now, contribution map will basically tell MentalRay what render passes get applied to specific geometry. Okay, so right now I have these three render passes that are being applied to this entire pod racer render layer. So this entire pod racer. But what if I wanted to get an image of, say, the specular pass of just this engine here? Well, what we can do is come in. Actually, I'll select the engine first, right-click on the render layer, go to Pass Contribution Maps, and then I'll create a Pass Contribution Map and then add what I have selected. So we can see it's gone ahead and done that. You can see this little arrow here, so we can drop that down and see the Pass Contribution Map. I can name this something like left engine, so that way I know what's on that contribution map. And now over here in my passes, what I can do is I can say, all right, I wanted the specular for this left engine. So I have my specular pass, and I can select my left engine contribution map and go ahead and apply that to apply the specular pass to that contribution map. So that way I'll get an image of just the specular for this left engine here. So as we can see, by using render layers, render passes, and contribution maps, we can really get a fine level of control over our rendered images. Now it's important to point out that when we're using either render layers or render passes or both, we'll need to actually do a batch render in order to get all of our images out, even if we're just rendering a still image. Now, if you want to get more in-depth on how to take advantage of render passes, check out the Render Passes in Maya 2009 course.